And last but not least, I'd like to pass the floor over to Jega.
Right, thank you, Nadia. Do you have the slides up there? There's a term used in the railway industry. They call it mind the gap. And mind the gap simply means that there is always a space between the car, the coach, if you like, and the platform. There's a small gap over there. If you wrongly put your leg into that, you are going to regret it, right? So we always say mind the gap. So when you say mind the gap, I can look at the gap and I can mind the gap. All right, I'll better stay behind. Right. So, but what if you can't see the gap? What if we don't know where the gaps are? What if we do not know how many gaps are there? Or maybe the gap doesn't even matter in the first place. So what we want to do is that the future of learning, it's about trying to find out what the gaps are first. Because if we can really understand that, then we'll be able to handle this matter a little differently. Now, what I mean by this gap, let's go. Imagine there is actually a trail over here. The trail, we've been using the trail for a long time. We've been walking through the trail for a long time. There are many experts who have gone through the trail, and they come back and tell the story. So more or less, we know what's in that trail. You know, there is a bit of a slippery slope, some rocky edges there. You got to be careful when it rains, it's a bit muddy, and some are quite steep. And in terms of weather pattern, there's probably rain, and when it's hot, it's really hot, so make sure you have enough water, and those are the rules for you to walk that trail. Now, that trail that I'm talking about is how the business landscape used to be. After 9/11, the trail became a little bit more rough. The trail became a little bit more unpredictable. But we knew what was along the trail. In other words, there were variables, but the variables, we can still identify them. What we don't know is how it's going to work or how it's going to come into play, but we can still identify those variables. That was once upon a time. And that's why we have processes like SWOT analysis, PESTEL, scenario planning, mitigation plans and all that became very relevant because we knew what the variables were. We just have to prepare people for those variables. By the end of that trail, we came to this open space. And this open space is not a trail, but a terrain. Now, one thing good about terrain is that, well, there's a risk in the terrain, but it's also tremendous opportunity in that terrain too. But the terrain is something that we do not know what is coming. In the past, we knew what it was coming, we just didn't know when it was coming. But right now, we don't even know what is coming. I like what Frank just said. November, right, Frank, when ChatGPT was announced. Yep. So last year, 31st of October, 2022, 2022, right? None of us knew anything about ChatGPT. A year later, almost every aspect of business is changing because of that. So what we are trailing into right now is a space that we don't even know what are the opportunities coming. So question here is this. How would you prepare a person who is going to the trail? Would that same process work to prepare an employee or team members to take on that terrain? And here is where we need to understand. I'm not saying that everything that was used in the past is not applicable in the future, but we need to start to think differently for that future. Let me show you this. How many of you have seen this before? 4 levels. How did the 7 come? Oh, last night I slept for 3 hours. So 3 plus 4, 7. Okay, good, right? So 4 levels of competency, or 4 levels of learning. Show of hands, how many of you have seen this before? Okay, so most have not, so I'll just quickly go through it. Now, everything that we start with, whenever we learn something, we go through a process called unconscious incompetence. Unconscious means I did not realize such thing exists, therefore I'm incompetent, I didn't know how to do it. Okay, like for example, let's say we're going to put you through a fire safety training. I'm going to put you all through a fire safety training. And in this fire safety training, I'm going to talk to you about fire safety. How do you handle yourself? Now, you're going to start from this level of unconscious incompetence. Because fire safety, why me? I'm not going to be in a fire situation. That's the fire brigade will take care of that. I don't need to know that. So we are unconscious about it. We didn't know that it was very important. And because we never thought it was important, we never knew how to do it either. Unconscious incompetence. But let's say I put you through a simulator in a room, and I say that the two exits at the back there, there's fire. All right? There's a fire hydrant on here, but there is a 30-meter away, there is one door that you can escape from. However, there are two live electrical wires also hanging down there. Now, tell me, in 30 seconds, can you escape? And this is where we go like, okay, maybe I will take the fire hydrant. I will throw the fire hydrant towards the burning door, and then I will. No, you've been watching too many Tamil movies, right? It doesn't work that way. Okay. So, what happens then is that a level of awareness comes in. Fire safety. I don't know how to handle it. Conscious incompetence. Then you go through a program, training and all that. Somebody shows you the SOP, what to do, what not to do, where you not to be a hero. And then you start relaying the process. Then, now I know. So I'm conscious that fire is hazardous. And I'm also competent. I know what the SOPs are. And if we keep doing it over and over, it goes into a conditioning phase. And therefore, now I know how to handle any form of fire situation. Why? Because it's already in my system, and I can take on and do that. You don't even think about it anymore. You don't even talk about it anymore, but you know how to do it. The unconscious competence. Now, why I'm showing you this is that it goes to the point of why corporate training fails. The reason why corporate training sometimes fails, have you all seen the report, the ones, I think came out about 2 years back, or what was about how many billion was being used for a leadership program, and there's no results from there, all right? Now, why does this happen? Because a lot of times, corporate training assumes that the audience are actually conscious incompetence. They know what they don't know. And they are coming here to learn what they need to know. The reality is, people don't even know what they don't know. So why I'm showing you this is because when we are talking about walking into this terrain, this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity from once upon a time, we need to get people into the mode of discovery. They need to discover what they need to learn. They need to identify the gaps themselves. And that means the whole concept of learning has to change. In the digital space, it's no longer about content download. One of the challenges we have today is that we have too much content, too much download, not much process of how to assimilate that content into day-to-day practice. So what we want to do is that we want to create learning opportunities whereby it's not about taking them from conscious incompetence to conscious competence, but actually giving them enough opportunity for them to realize that they are unconscious about their own incompetence. In other words, we want them to discover learning. We want them to discover about what they need to actually fill in, because the terrain ahead is something that is unknown. Now for this, learning has to take a slightly different approach. It's not new anyway. So learning here is all about creating avenues for discovery. The future of learning, and when I say the future of learning, I'm not talking about 5 years down the road. Future of learning is tomorrow, Wednesday. That's the future. Right? The future of learning is that not about content download, but learning is about creating avenues for discovery, prototyping, experimenting, feedback, giving people projects, analysis, debates. Let people do it that way. And I'm a big proponent of the area of business, games, and simulation, but simulations are not the only way. There are so many other ways on how to do that. And it's about giving people real-life projects and let them discover what their gaps are in that learning space. Once they discover their own gaps, they will be able to identify what they need to learn differently. And therefore, then they are motivated to go and find the necessary content, necessary processes and all. Now, I'm not saying content is not important. On the right-hand side column there is all about content. Expert, e-learning, and all that. Content is king, no doubt about it. Content is definitely king. However, context is queen. In a game of chess, if the king is no longer around, the game is over. And in the same game of chess, if the queen is no longer around, the game will soon be over. So the future of learning is all about putting people into grounds for experiment, prototyping, and this is not new. I'm telling you, this is not new at all, because this was how learning used to be before the industrial age. Before the industrial age, learning was all about practice. Have you seen a martial arts instructor giving people instruction? This is how you kick. Raise your leg, turn, okay? You see your knee must actually cross over the target, and flip it this way, and that's how you kick. No, they actually put them through this practice, let them learn. You watch Karate Kid, you understand that. Put them through the practice so that they understand why they need to learn. Same thing goes to meditation. In the ancient days, when they teach them meditation, they don't talk to them about giving them a lecture or electronic PDF about what meditation is. Put them through meditation, and then they come to the Guruji, I was meditating, I saw the world, I saw the sun, I went to 7 different worlds and all that, and then the Guruji tells you that you have been hallucinating. That's not meditation. Okay, I was thinking all this while I was a highly weighted soul, and no. Right? And learning was all about debate. Learning was all about challenging one another. Learning was all about people giving different opinions and other people giving counter opinions. And this is not new. And the future of learning has to be a ground for experiment, prototyping, debate, and collaborative process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jega. I can see that we have a lot of questions already coming in from the audience on Slido. This is